Hello everybody, this is Jen from Scrapping Posh, and I am here today with the first part tutorial for the Eeerie Tale paper collection from G45, my Haunted Mansion tutorial, and I am showing you the beautiful collection right now, and all of the goodies that I have to go with that collection. And I'm showing you this so that you get an idea of approximate how much paper you need. I have, this is an old collection. It's discontinued from 2013. So, the good news is I think it would be good with nearly any paper collection. So, if you have any haunted or Halloween, G45 Halloween paper, I think it would go good with the 220 or the G45 Master Detective series or the Halloween in Wonderland. Any of those would go great with this. So if you have those, and whatever they come out with this year would be great. I'm not sure what it'll be, but I know it'll be awesome. And also check out my 221B Baker Street tutorial if you like building structures. That one's a bit more simple than this one. It may be a good starter. Also, you seen that white cardstock? I changed my mind. I use cream cardstock, and this is a medium weight chipboard. I get that chipboard at Walmart in packs of 25. So, also, you see that orange cardstock? I trade that out for purple. I have G45 washi tape and black soot and vintage photo distress ink. I do not use this green, peeled paint. As far as adhesive goes, I got my ATG gun, score tape, and my Scotch Quick Dry adhesive. I showed you the Tim Holtz Multi-Matte Medium, but I do not end up using that on this, but it is a good idea to reinforce your fussy cuts with that if you feel the need. Also, if you make this and it's going to be out and about displayed, you may want to use some Mod Podge or something on it so that you can wipe it down if it gets dusty or dirty. So just a suggestion. There's my trusty Scotch Quick Dry adhesive. It is awesome, and I don't use tabs in my projects. It allows me to glue two pieces of cardstock together side by side or at a 90-degree angle, and after about 10 seconds it sticks and enough that it allows it to dry. Now, my favorite cardstock, black cardstock, is Black Cat from Coordinations, and they have this at my local Pat-Catans, and they also carry this at Joann Fabrics for a very good price. You see all my scraps I have there? I cut those up for these hinges here, or I don't know what you call them, to put two 90-degree angles together. I use that for all my chipboard. Now, what I have, if you haven't watched my prep video, now's the time to go back and watch the prep video for a couple different reasons. Because one, if you haven't watched it, you have no idea what I'm doing here. These are my die cuts from my silhouette, cameo silhouette. I made a cut file that includes everything you see here. And this is my small paper model. And whenever, the roof keeps falling off. Whenever I do a project like this, I always make a miniature project to make sure that it works before I waste all the cardstock and chipboard on it. So that's what that is. Now this is, I think I scaled it up. That little one, this one is, I think, 125% of that one. So it's about 25% bigger. Now, what I'm going to do now is I speed up the video, and it's about ×4. And I'm taking each one of these cardstock pieces that make up the house, and I'm putting them in order. And the reason why I'm doing that is to make sure that I have everything I need. It's just a good idea to make sure that you have all your pieces cut out. And if you're like me and if you cut them out one day and you wait 3 days before you start on it, you want to make sure you haven't lost anything. Now, I don't have a roto trim. I think that's what it's called. Maybe I'll get one day, but I don't have one yet. So I cut all my chipboard with my Fiskars cutter. It's not the rotary blade one, it's the other one. And all I do is I cut one side, I flip it over, I cut the other side, and then you wiggle it back and forth and it just comes off. So I also heard that you could cut those with the quilt or fabric cutters. Like, they look like big pizza cutters. I don't know what they're called. And but I have not tried that. I have one somewhere, but I don't know where it is. The two small strips there, which I just cut one of them, they measure 3/4 by 8 1/4, and you can find all the measurements and a template and the Cameo silhouette file for free on my blog, www.scrappingposh.blogspot.com. So again, if you haven't seen the prep video, go to that one so I can get you going in the right direction. Now, most of the walls for the house, the front walls are 8 1/4 by 3, and then the top part of the towers walls are all 3 by 3, and that's what I'm cutting now. So if you see, I have a bag full of chipboard, and those are leftover pieces of chipboard from mini albums that I've made. And I use those first before I break into full sheets of cardstock. So if you ever have leftovers from your mini albums, don't throw it away. I typically don't throw anything away that's bigger than, like, I don't know, 1 inch by maybe like 6 inches, because I do like making these projects, and if you can't use them for a wall or like a spine of a book or something like that, sometimes you can use them to reinforce things. I think I did that on my 221B Baker Street one too. So again, I think that's all the smaller walls to the house. Looks like I have one more 3/4 by 8 1/4 piece and one more 3 by 3 piece. So yeah, this piece here would probably be too small for anything except for maybe like a spine of a mini album, but I typically make my spines just a little bigger. So there's the last piece of that, and I have that 3 by 3 left, and I'll find a scrap for that too. So there's all the front of the house pieces, and then the turret all the way around. Now I'm going to get the sides out, and the sides are quite a bit bigger. They measure like a 6 by 8 1/4. So I'm going to get my full sheets of chipboard out to... Oh, I take that back. One measures 6 by 8 1/4. And then there's a step down, so the other one is 5 3/4 by 8 1/4. One thing I didn't do, and you'll see me here in a little bit, I'm going to cut the floor out. One of the things I didn't do is account for the width, or I guess the thickness of the chipboard. So when things get a little wonky when they stack up dimensionally, and when you put that big, when I put the big tower piece on, it ends up coming out a little bit crooked. If you were doing anything else besides a haunted house, you would definitely correct that. But since it was a haunted house and it's kind of supposed to be rickety and whimsical, I just left it the way it was. And actually, once you got all the walls and the roof on and the internal wall to support it, you can even tell. So if you find it going just a little bit crooked, it probably is. So, but it still worked out. Now you'll find when you, and I explained this in the previous video, but you'll find when you get to the back that the parts have a top and a bottom cut off of them, the walls themselves. And the reason for that is because your walls open so you can get inside the house. If you don't want your walls to open, then you don't have to cut those strips off the top and bottom. You just make it all one. And I wanted mine to open so I can get to the inside because I like seeing the inside, and to add lights to it, which you can always add lights previous to closing the back up. So that is completely up to you. So you'll see those little strips off to the side there. I cut those out of the chipboard also. And then, like I said, those actually attach to the house where the other ones, the bigger part of the walls that have the windows on them hinge so they open. But you absolutely don't have to do that. That is completely optional. So I'm almost done with the house pieces, and what you'll see me do next is struggle a lot to cut the windows and door frames out. It is not an easy task to cut the windows and doors out. I used an X-Acto knife. If you have a better way of doing it, absolutely do it that way. And let me know. Let me know. Now, you see here I have multiple floors. I only use the bottom floor. I do cut, or at least I may not even cut the upper floors. I just left them out of cardstock and not the chipboard because they're the wrong size. When I got all done, when I got done putting the roof together, they didn't match. So we're going to figure that out later. So just cut the bottom floor, which I took the rest of the floors out of the Cameo cut file, and I did not include them on the templates. So as long as you're following that, you're good. The reason why they're incorrect is I had the wrong dimensions for where the turret went, it just didn't work. So I just put them off to the side, and I thought we'll figure it out later. So yeah, it does look like I started cutting some extra pieces. Like I said, just the bottom floor is all you need. That's all that's included in the cut files and the templates that I provided. Did some fancy cutting here by getting these little parts out. And then I just use my X-Acto knife to get in the corner. Now, lucky for you, I don't think I filmed the entire X-Acto knife episode, so you don't have to watch that whole thing. I actually think that I do like one set and that's it. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking the walls and using them as a template to outline the window so I can cut the window. Now I don't cut each individual pane, I just cut the window shape. So the first thing I try to do is use my cutter there, but it doesn't work. So I have this X-Acto knife and I go through and cut each one of those windows out. And I think I did this over 2 or 3 day period because it is exhausting and it hurt my wrist. My carpal tunnel was horrid during this. So if you can get somebody else to do this part for you, that's awesome. So on and off here, I just show you cutting some of the chipboard out with the X-Acto knife, and then when I'm done cutting out the windows and doors, I use a nail file to kind of clean up those edges. So this is sped up. This may be sped up like times 10, if not more. So it takes an awful long time to do this. And then you see that I have that little nail file there to clean up the edges. And even with the doors, I don't do each individual pane of where the glass would be. I just do the curve around the top. And I'm probably like shaking out my wrist. I get a new blade. Well, actually, okay, so this is I don't know what this, let me get that. Unless I threw it away. It was a retractable X-Acto knife. And it may have been because I had so much pressure on it, but it absolutely broke like the first time I used it. I think it was EK Success, which I was kind of sad about, but I like have it right now in front of me and it's like this spring. it just totally broke. So I try to change blades often. If you do this, just buy like 6 blades and plan on using them all. So while I'm doing this, I'll just chat. I sped up most of these videos ×4. I didn't tape everything. I taped everything that was important. But, like, when I was gluing shingles on and stuff, I didn't tape that whole thing because it was just the same thing over and over again. There's about 4 hours of tutorials, sped up at either 4 or 10. I'm going to say that this is probably a 16 to 24 hour project, somewhere in there. So, definitely, be willing to spend some time on it. Oh, so here on my chipboard, what I'm doing is I'm taking this big black permanent marker and I'm going around the windows, the fronts, the backs, and the insides. Since my walls are black, I want to keep everything else black too. I don't want that cardboard to show through, that chipboard color. So I do this with every window and every door, and it does help because the windows don't always cover it. So voila, I cut out so much of this process. So you guys can see it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the siding of the house, and I decide on this orange stripe for the siding. And I also decide that I want an alternate orange and black so that it has some contrast. So I cut 1/4 inch strips of this orange all the way. I end up cutting 2 full pieces of 12 by 12 orange paper. So be prepared for that. And then I cut 2 full pieces of black 12 by 12 paper to 1/4 inch also. And then you'll see when I layer them, I layer alternate orange, black, orange, black. So this is what I'm doing off to the side is I'm cutting all these pieces down to 1/4 inch, and then I'm going to distress every one of them with black soot. And that one was just too small to cut on my cutter. So I'm just kind of cutting down the pattern paper. There's a line there to cut, so it was easy to cut. Now, here's my black. I'm going to cut all those to 1/4 inch. And again, that is, it ends up being 2 full pieces of paper. Now I just take my ATG gun and I put like a layer of glue or tape on the house itself. And then I start layering orange, black, alternating. Now, what I do is I overlap each strip by about half a strip. What that's going to do is allow me to kind of ruffle it up a little bit so that it doesn't look flat. Now, when I get to the windows, I change my process halfway through, and I'll tell you what it is now. You may want to watch this part before you actually start it, because here I'm piecing each side of the window together. What I end up doing towards the end is laying all my pieces out and laying those strips of pattern paper and black cardstock across all the pieces, and then cutting the windows out with an X-Acto knife. So definitely watch ahead before you start doing this, because the way that I do it the second time is, or the progression of it, it gets easier. I figure it out. So you can learn from my mistakes. Okay, so again, I distress each one of the pattern papers and then alternating the black paper. And I don't think I make you watch this whole process either. And you don't have to be exact on the windows, going around the windows, because we have window frames to cover those. So it's kind of forgiving. And you can see here, I'm starting to speed up by putting more adhesive on the paper. And there, I just covered the whole thing. I was just like, okay, if this works, I'm covering the whole thing up. And then here, yeah, I think this is, yeah, I'm just going to cover up the windows and then cut them from the back. So, I don't know if it's me getting lazy or me figuring out what's the fastest way to do it. This is definitely faster than piecing each one, because if I had done that, I would have had to go through and make itty bitty tiny rows for between those two windows. And if the top's a little crooked, that's okay too, because we're going to end up putting a border on there. I use the scallop punch for the border, but you can use any kind of border you want, or any kind of punch you want, or cut it on your silhouette or whatever. You'll see that later on in the video, or probably the next video. So I just go through and make sure that I cut from the back. I don't cut the cardstock that separates the window panes. And then when I go to the front, I just make sure I don't push hard enough to go through those so that they stay intact. And then you see me, ruffling up those hinges. And you can see there, I got a huge pile of stuff done. Here is where I've figured out how to do it quickly. So this is what you want to do from the beginning. Another trick is you don't have to distress all 4 sides. of that pattern paper, you only have to distress the long side of the bottom one. So here you can see I have 3 pieces of paper, or 3 of the sides of the house all together, and I'm putting siding on all 3 pieces together, and then I'll just cut them apart, this is how you should start. That very small spot on the side, on the left hand side there, I don't even put anything on that because it's such a small spot, and it has I don't know what to call those, the 90-degree pieces, the hinges. I call them hinges. If I think of a better word for it halfway through the tutorial, I'll tell you guys. So you can see how much faster this is. You just stick them all together, and then you cut them off so that you can use your scraps instead of using full pieces. And you see I still have a good stack there off to the side. So, sorry about the lighting on these. This is where I cut the pieces apart. As you can see, it's like midday and the light's shining through the window, and there's really nothing I can do about it. I have to craft when I have time, so I even have my light on in the upper left-hand corner, and obviously my room light on, so I do a lot of crafting at night though, so this doesn't happen very often. And now I'm just cutting out the part of the door frame there with a pair of scissors. Worked fine. There wasn't any glue holding it on, so I just kind of went between the back and my siding. And then there's a couple pieces of the siding on either side of those doors that pulled up a little bit. So I just went and glued those back on. And then I'm using my X-Acto knife to kind of pry off those sides. And I think I end up, for the most part, making that more dimensional, the siding more dimensional. I end up using I think it was a ruler, or no, my bone folder. If you use your bone folder, you get up underneath your siding and you run it along the bottom, it works perfectly. So here I'm doing the top of the tower, and I guess I'm sorry guys, I'm texting on my video. I can't stop life though. So each one, this is the only one that has windows though. So maybe I was just getting that one out of the way. Again, taking each one of these. It's a test of patience, I think. But I enjoyed doing it, so I like making things. Obviously. There's not a lot to say right now on this part of the video. Here I line all 3 of these pieces up, and once you put one strip down at the bottom, they stick together really well, and it's easy to finish it off. So these were the easiest pieces, and I think they're the last pieces I have to do. Except, I want to tell you what I wish I would have done. Each one of the window boxes, I wish I had put siding on the fronts of each window box because I think they blend in with the roof too much. So you may consider doing that. Oh, and here's where I figure out that the bone folder works really good. You take your ruler, you put it on the edge, and you run your bone folder underneath the sides of, or under the flap of your siding, and it rips it in some places, and it pulls it up in some places, and I think it looks really good. So you want to use your ruler because if not, you'll just rip your paper off. And it's also easier to do it before you cut the windows out and stuff. So this is the large piece, or actually there's two pieces there that go on the back. Okay, so if you hear some background noise, my apologies. My dog's in here chewing on her bone, and she's being good, so I'm going to let her go at it. Even though it may make some crunchy, slurpy noises into the microphone. And you guys are going to have to, like, accept my apologies for anything. I always cut out, like, if the dogs start barking or something, or if somebody's extremely loud, I try and cut it out. But when I'm doing voiceovers, like the very long voiceovers in a short amount of time, like I'm going to try and get these done, it's just hard to get like extremely quiet time for like the whole time. So you're going to hear things in the background, and just life. So here I cut the two sides apart. And then I just go down the side with my scissors. And then I'm going to trim out the windows again. And like I said, just be careful not to cut the little window frames. And honestly, if you cut the window frames, it's not a huge deal because we're going to put window frames back in. It gives you a good idea of where those frames go, and it gives the inside like a backing. I don't know. I like it where you can see the windows. I like leaving the windows in there, so that's what I do. You don't have to. You can cut through every single one of those little window panes, and when you're cutting your templates, you don't even have to cut the window panes out if you don't want to. Save you some time. So this is going to take a couple minutes. I skipped over doing a lot of what you see, the piles on the side there. So I wanted to at least do one complete for the video. And you'd be surprised how sturdy these are after you get done putting all the siding on, because essentially you have, a pattern paper and your cardstock layered on top of each other. Well, two pattern papers, most of it. So it gets pretty heavy duty in itself. And then we're going to put it on the medium weight chipboard. So is that medium? Yeah, it's medium weight because it's an 1/8 inch thick chipboard. So for you guys who have a roto trim, you'll have to let me know if it's worth it. Like, for what I do. I don't know, because I still wouldn't be able to cut the insides of those windows out with it and stuff. But on the Cricut Maker, I think, I have a regular Cricut. Oh, I Mod Podged the outside of this. Good idea. I had a good idea. Yeah, I Mod Podged the outside of it so it would be like you could wipe it down and stuff, but then I didn't do the roof. Silly me. I recommend Mod Podging the whole thing. So, oh, make sure your siding goes the right direction on these small pieces, because the two small pieces in the back, it has to go lengthways, and then the two small pieces in the front, it has to go the other way. So I was talking about the Cricut. So I have a Cricut. I started with a Cricut, and then I got a Cameo Silhouette, and I like the software better on the Cameo Silhouette, simply because I'm an engineer, and I used AutoCAD in school, and it's very similar to AutoCAD. So for all you people out there that use the Cameo Silhouette software, you're essentially using AutoCAD. You can totally be a draftsman. um, so anyways, the Cricut Create Studio or Cricut Craft Room, I haven't figured it out yet. And mostly because I haven't really tried, because I use my Cameo. But if I got a Cricut Maker, then I could cut the chipboard, because it cuts thick stuff. Well, here I got all these. Let's just. I cut each of these out. You don't need two. And I can't figure out how to put the floor together. I figure it out, don't worry. So I pulled my little model out to try and figure out how to put the floor together, and realized that I have two of the same piece of flooring. Again, you only need one of each of these pieces. Okay, there you go. That's how it's supposed to look. So lay it out like that. And then I'm just going to use a piece of cardstock to kind of bind these two together. Cut it to length. And I'm going to use score tape. I could have used wet glue. It would have worked just as well. I think I had the score tape just laying there, and it was almost to the end, so I needed to use it. Okay, so again, in order to link these two pieces of chipboard together, all you have to do is get a piece of paper. I usually put it on the front and the back, and just use the adhesive to go from, over both sides. And if you do that to the front and back, that's going to keep it secure. It's not going to go anywhere. In addition to that, I just go ahead and start gluing the black pieces onto the chipboard. This is going to give it a nice base to go by. And then I had some extra cardstock sticking out there, so I just trimmed it off. It's probably the chipboard that was the wrong size, but it ends up working out at the end. It's not an exact science. It doesn't have to be right on. It can be approximate, and it's still going to work. If you were doing like a different kind of structure and you wanted it to look really seamless and really nice, then things you would have to take into account for, you would definitely watch your seams, make sure that your measurements were exact. And the other thing that I didn't do was take into account for the width or the thickness of the chipboard. So you'll see in places that it kind of gets a little crooked, but once you put the reinforcements in the middle part, it you can't even tell. So here you're just going to see me glue all the siding onto the chipboard pieces, and I use wet glue for that. I did, after I put the Mod Podge on these, I flattened them. I just put them underneath my cutting mat for overnight, I think, to make them nice and flat, because after I put the Mod Podge on them, they did curl up. Well, sorry if you can hear my dog. She's getting to the end of her bone, and she's being slobbery about it. So on this one, that's like the big bay window. Or I guess it's not a bay. Yeah, well, that one's a big window. This is the bay window where you have to actually piece the parts together. And is that the hardest part of this whole thing? That bay window may be the hardest part of this whole thing. Oh, those two pieces, you want to make sure that they kind of okay, so when you have two pieces that butt up against each other, you want to kind of try and make sure that you have a somewhat continuous line. I forgot to cut the window out of that one. So that your siding matches up on, you know, the two alternating patterns. So this, I mean, the rest of this is pretty self-explanatory. I think until I get done doing this, I'm going to give you guys some music. Okay, so what you just got done watching me do is make these hinges, and basically I take all the scrap paper I have left over from the cut files that I did and from the mini album and any other black strips that are 1 inch and cut them in 1 inch strips and score them at a 1/2 inch, and that gives you these I guess gussets. Now you glue one to the bottom, you glue one to the side. Make sure you don't cover your doorways. If you have any interference, you cut that out. You cut them to size, you glue them on the bottom, you glue them on the side, and then you'll use a strip to glue those two together. And I just stuck a bottle there to keep that side from falling down. So you need about 8 hands for a minute, so just have some stuff laying around that you can use to prop these up on until you can get two together. There, I use my cup that has my scissors in it, and you line the hinge up with the side, you glue it on, and then you glue the other side to the side of the mansion. Okay, so you can do anything by using these. And I start on the inside, and then I'll put them on the outside also. Which is another reason why your siding doesn't have to go end to end, because you're going to have a 1/2 inch on each corner to play with. And then and why I didn't do the sides with the black marker is because you're not going to see them. We're going to cover them up with these pieces of these hinges. I'm going to call them hinges. Okay, so, and now this one, the wall goes the other way. So I put glue on the inside. And again, if it covers a window or a door, just cut that part of the hinge out. Hannah, you're being loud. I hope you guys can't hear her chewing. Okay, so, and that's so it goes the opposite way, so the glue goes on the inside of that fold. Alright, and then you just get your next piece, make sure it's the right piece. Fold your hinge, and make these things ahead of time, because if you have to stop every time you need one of these to make one, it's going to drive you nuts. I literally save all my scrap paper and make these out of them. Now, this piece here that I'm about to put on, it has that really tiny part next to the window. So I glued it on that first. Well, actually, I glued it on the other part first and then realized I couldn't do that. Now, I'm going to cut that part that sticks in the window so that it doesn't show. And then I'll go ahead and do the other side the same way because I don't want it to show. And you find a different, a million different ways to do this. You just find what works best for you. Okay, so now I'm going to do it to the edge. And this is where my my siding doesn't match exactly with the floor. And like I said, I just keep going and it does work itself out. So you can almost see how that's not exactly at a 90-degree angle. But once I'll put that little 3/4 inch piece there, and it kind of builds up so that it matches. So, and then if you have like an 1/8 inch gap or something, it's not a huge deal. That little hinge, that little 90-degree hinge that you're using to put those together, that can cover those gaps. But I do make sure that every corner, inside and out, is covered by one of these hinges. Okay, it's a different day, and now it's midday again. You can see, using my items I have around my desk to help prop stuff up. And we're coming to the end of this tutorial. So I just want to say stay tuned for the next tutorial. I'll have it up very soon. And once it's up, I'll link it at the end here. And you guys have a great day and good luck starting your building project. If you want to see more, please subscribe. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you much.